All right, folks. Today's Reddit story comes from r/EntitledParents, where OP has to navigate the toxic behavior of his mother-in-law and her absurd attempts at healing his deathly ill wife. This one is just absolutely ridiculous. Alrighty, let's dive in. My mother-in-law tried to stop my wife's life-saving treatments. Allow me to introduce you to my late mother-in-law. I'll call her Carol for the sake of variety. Though I've heard many stories about her, for the most part, I'll stick with things that I witnessed myself. There are enough of them. I don't think Carol ever met a New Age concept that she didn't like. Her expressed goal was to synthesize all religion, science, and mysticism into a unified whole, all of it. To this end, she amassed a large collection of books and stranger objects from her travels with a special focus on healing. Her library had volumes about vibration manipulation, curative trampolining, homeopathic color therapy, and on and on. I'm not joking or exaggerating here. Her shelves had lots of admittedly pretty mineral crystals, along with bottles of magic goddess essence water, evaporated away, and bogus radon protectors powered by diagrams of geometric figures. Carol's parenting was, how shall I put this, more darkly eccentric. She was physically and emotionally abusive to her children. One still has some pencil lead embedded in his hand from when she stabbed him because she wasn't satisfied with his piano practice. She attacked one with a kitchen knife. She started slut-shaming her daughter, later my wife, as soon as she grew breasts for growing breasts. So she forced her daughter to wear overly large bathing suits with the apparent intention of making said breasts look smaller by contrast, but with the actual effect that there were wardrobe malfunctions. She was ashamed that her daughter went into medicine and became a noted specialist rather than supporting her own non-traditional medical work. My wife got the hell out at age 17 and moved across the country to go to university. For most of the time after that, she went relatively low contact. A decade ago, my wife suffered from a surgical error which resulted in abdominal sepsis and asked me to call her mother. That made me understand just how deathly serious the situation was. I was to call in the family for what might be the last time. I hadn't grasped that her life was truly at risk until that point. Nothing less would have induced her to try to get her mother to visit. To her credit, Carol hurried out for what was supposed to be a couple of weeks. It was expected that in that time, my wife would be either dead or on the road to recovery. Carol stayed in our home, and at first things didn't go too badly. For the most part, we just didn't talk about the treatments that my wife was undergoing. Carol did express concern about the antibiotics that were being given since, according to her own views, antibiotics did nothing but harm. But a couple of weeks stretched into a couple of months, and Carol became harder to live with. She was angry when I stroked my wife's hair with my hand because I was blocking the energy from her chakra. She started blaming me for having somehow caused the nausea that the botched surgery was supposed to cure. I drove her out to pick up a magical concoction of essential oils on the condition that she check with one of the doctors before applying them. I pointed out that if the mixture had the power to heal, then it also had the power to cause harm, which Carol denied. When we got back to the hospital, I nabbed one of the residents when we reached my wife's floor to ask about that. Carol became furious about that, and it was clear that she had no intention of talking with the doctors. At home, she became more abusive to me. She was claiming that I was abusing my wife by not letting her have her things in the house. At that point, I lost my temper. The first time I'd yelled at a person in literally a couple of decades. I told her that almost everything in sight was actually her daughter's, displacing my stuff. The sofas, the piano, tables and chairs, the bookshelves and the electronics. The shelves for the CDs and DVDs were mine, but half the contents were hers. Carol wanted to know if I'd be continuing the herbal remedies after she left, and I told her that was up to my wife. I'd continue them if she wanted. I'd stop them if she preferred. Carol screamed that I was abusing my wife by following her own wishes rather than her mother's. On the night before Carol was finally supposed to be heading out, I was restless. That particular nightmare was about to end, but my wife was still quite ill. I got to thinking about that essential oil mixture, which included both oil of cloves and oil of cinnamon. Those are both strongly irritating if left on the skin, and Carol had been painting my wife's feet with the stuff. Her feet were apparently the correct energy points to draw out the infection. I went online and found the manufacturer's instructions, which specified that the oil needed to be significantly diluted with some neutral oil if it was going to be applied to the skin. Carol hadn't even been using the stuff properly. Well, that explained why the skin on my wife's feet was yellow and starting to peel. But Carol was furious when I calmly pointed out the problems that she was creating out of ignorance. A few days after Carol left, my wife took a turn for the worse and had to go back into the intensive care unit. And I dreaded the phone call that I had to make, not because of the bad news, but because I anticipated how Carol would react, and she didn't disappoint. If you really loved her, you'd put her back onto the herbal oil and stop the antibiotics. You know perfectly well they don't do a damn lick of good. At which point I hung up. I had other things to worry about. My wife pulled through. After months in the hospital and 3 stays in the ICU, she's still in poor health. I told her that I was putting my foot down. Under no circumstances was her mother welcome under my roof again. She had grossly abused her privileges as a house guest. I didn't care about the family custom that family members were always welcome to stay as guests. I would not stay under the same roof as her mother. Having heard my stories, and based on her own experiences, my wife agreed. A few years ago, Carol died, much as she had lived. She was diagnosed with metastasized lung cancer. Although she did undergo some real medical therapies, she relied mostly on her quack remedies, pawpaw twig powder, whey protein immune boosters, and the like. The usual crap that ethics-free swindlers pawn off on desperate sufferers. She firmly believed that all the little white spots on her lung x-rays were a good sign, and that her rapid weight loss indicated that her boosters were draining the cancer away. If there's some existence after death, I hope she came to appreciate all of the harm that she did in life. Except, a couple of nights after she passed away, I was driving from the hospital back to the Energy Vortex house. The rental car's navigation device suggested a shorter route than I'd taken to get there. But that route turned into a back road, into a rough road in the hills, into a track through the forest. And in pitch darkness apart from my headlights, it took me over a rocky bump and directly into a tree trunk. Luckily, I was traveling slowly and stopped in time. As I paused, shaken, I got to wondering if there might be something to Carol's worldview after all, and if her vengeful spirit might have possessed the GPS device, making one last try at killing me. Alright, so where do we even begin with Carol the Cosmic Karen? You know, I've come across my fair share of entitled characters, but folks, this one definitely takes the cake. Seriously, I can't help but imagine Carol's house looking like a curious blend of a New Age bookstore and a bad episode of Hoarders. Books about vibration manipulation, healing trampolining, homeopathic color therapy sounds like the kind of place where the walls would glow in the dark from all the positive energy. The level of physical and emotional abuse she inflicted is just horrifying. Stabbing a child over piano practice? What the hell? Now let's move on to Carol's bizarre sense of entitlement and blame game. Blaming our storyteller for his wife's surgery gone wrong? Like he's the one who donned the scrubs and wielded the scalpel. Carol, I think we need to talk about the definition of cause and effect. And let's not forget the chakra energy blockage accusation. I'm sure there's a cosmic crime our storyteller has committed by just stroking his wife's hair. Geez, talk about hair-raising accusations. And then there's the mystical healing methods. I mean, I'm all for trying alternative healing methods, but let's be safe and informed before we do stuff like that, yeah? I bet she was a hoot at the local pharmacy. Can you imagine Carol in the essential oils aisle? Ah, yes, I need oil of cloves and oil of cinnamon. Don't bother with the instructions. I am a certified oil whisperer. Poor wife, having her feet painted with undiluted essential oils. Someone needs to tell Carol that foot painting is generally more enjoyable with non-irritating paint. Finally, we've got the GPS debacle. This sounds less like a shortcut and more like the beginning of a horror movie. Carol, fresh from the grave, possessing GPS systems and taking her son-in-law on a potentially fatal joyride in the middle of nowhere. I can just hear her spectral voice now. Turn left at the spooky old tree. Drive straight into the gaping abyss. Seriously though, everyone, while we can laugh at the absurdity of Carol's belief system, this story truly shows the lengths that entitlement and irrationality can go. It's a testament to the resilience of our storyteller and his wife to survive and thrive despite such a toxic presence in their lives. And if nothing else, Carol serves as a potent reminder of how not to behave in this life or the next. So, until our next Reddit story, keep your essential oils diluted, your chakras unblocked, and stay as far away as possible from the Carols of the world. Hey, wait! Before you go off chasing after your next internet rabbit hole, give that like button a quick little smack. And if you're feeling particularly adventurous today, why not dance with the subscribe button? Join our band of misfits here and let's share the laughter. Anyways, stay safe out there in that crazy world. Much love. Peace.